As you heard at the start of the show, I have a guest joining me. I want to show you, I got his book. This is a guest who's from Heritage Foundation. And I'm going to hold up his book to show you because I forgot to send Matt the Wonderful this book. But the book is called The Plot to Change America, How Identity Politics is Dividing the Land of the Free. This is the book. I got it actually very quickly delivered to us from Amazon. You can get it there too. It's a really great book. And I want to take a moment to introduce the author who is joining us, and then we'll talk about his book. But the author is someone who's with the Heritage Foundation. He's a senior fellow of the Douglas and Sarah Allison Center for Foreign Policy and the Angelus T. Arredondo E Pluribus Unum Fellow. I love anything with E Pluribus Unum in there. Love that. So he is with Heritage Foundation, but a very quick background about him. He really has quite a worldly background that is important, I think, in the issues we're going to be talking about. He spent close to 20 years as a journalist, 15 of them reporting from Europe, Asia, and Latin America. And he joined the Heritage Foundation in 2009 as a vice president of communications and became a research senior fellow in June of 2014. But the really cool thing about his background in life, this Mike Gonzalez was born in Cuba, left at the age of 12 in 1972. He's also lived in Belgium, France, Spain, Hong Kong, and South Korea, and has spent months living in and reporting from Afghanistan, Pakistan, China, Panama, and Cyprus. I could keep on reading his resume, but obviously very worldly, very accomplished person. He holds a bachelor's degree in communications from Boston's Emerson College and an MBA from Columbia Business School, fluent in Spanish and French, and he also reads Italian and Portuguese. And this is his second book, The Plot to Change America. And that is what we're going to talk about with him today. So, hello, Mike Gonzalez.
Well, Debbie, you're very kind in your introduction of me. I'm very happy to be on with you. And I tell you that your state, Texas, really does hold a special place in my heart. I love it there every time I go there. And so I want to say thank you to all your listeners as well.
Well, that's great. I love Texas, too. And I will tell you, I'm a native New Yorker, but don't tell anybody. I grew up in New York and practiced law in California for a long time. So we've moved around, too, but not quite as internationally as you. But yes, we love Texas. We would never leave. Well, I'll tell you, I want to get into this book right away from the perspective that I think many Americans have come to accept, without realizing why, that politics are inherently and irrationally tied to identity, that people make assumptions that politics somehow are rooted in or in the bloodstream. And so we have identity politics just prevalent in America. We have assumptions made about racial and ethnic groups because of particular background. You're assumed to hold particular political views. So I love that you are jumping on in this book, starting to talk about how do we get here? Where did this come from that we have this thought? Because actually, it's, as I pointed many times in my show, completely irrational that your beliefs on any subject should be tied to your skin color, race, or ethnicity. But yet identity politics is so prevalent. So would you start, please, by telling us, what is the historic source for this in America?
Well, first of all, I want to say that what you just said, you're the first interviewer who puts your finger on that. Yes, this idea that ideas and thoughts and behaviors are inherent in our DNA is actually quite ugly. And this is something that has now become the currency of our politics. And in fact, I call it the cultural software of our culture. It is the way we do everything now, this idea that we are representatives of whatever group the government has put us in because the government has created these groups. Now, if you want to know when it started, when did we begin, really, we have to go back to the 1920s and Antonio Gramsci, an Italian communist leader, who realized, wait a second, the worker is not rising anywhere. Marx promised that the worker was going to rise all the time and overthrow the bourgeoisie, but that this is not happening. It's happened only in one place, a backwater part of Europe called Russia, but it didn't happen in Germany, Italy, or anywhere else. So Gramsci says, well, the reason why is because the worker has bought into the ideas of his oppressor, of the bourgeois. He has bought into the family. He has bought into the nation. The worker's patriotic. He's bought into religion. He has bought into the economic system. So what we have to do is drive these ideas from his brain with consciousness-raising exercises. with struggle sessions, which you see today, by the way. I can go into that later if you want me to. Then, so Marxism actually kind of transforms from economics to culture, and then we have a second iteration of this come in the 60s, in which the worker himself is replaced as the locus of rebellion and replaced by groups, identity groups, at first based on race and ethnicity, then sex, sexual orientation, gender, even disability status, anything that confers a feeling of resentment or victimhood, which can be used by the members of said group to claim attention, respect, reward, compensatory justice, etc. You can tell right away why this is such a bad idea, such a bad way to order society.
It is a bad way to order society. You know, it is related to the point you're making. I have heard others argue that, you know, America had the communists coming to America in the 1920s, and they were trying to sell the just pure economic Marxism, and there were just many people. You're making the point, I guess, in the same way, I guess, but many people who thought, why would we want to change the economic system in America? It looks pretty great to us. I mean, we have opportunity, we have prosperity, we have the potential and ability to advance. So what is it you're knocking about America? And so they had to find like another intellectual manipulation of people. So they said, okay, you know, it isn't just that we're selling economic Marxism, but they had to find a new way to get people to undermine their love of and respect and reverence really for America. So they chose this race, ethnicity, national origin thing. Does that gel with what you're saying?
Oh, completely. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Herbert Marcuse, who is a member of the Frankfurt School, a German-American academic who is very influential in this country in the 60s and 70s, he said himself, you know, capitalism is too successful. It does produce a good life. The worker is the American worker is an idiot who's too happy with his car, his hi-fi, his refrigerator. He is useless. He's never going to rebel. So then another thing he says, and I'm quoting him directly, he says, liberation depends on the consciousness of servitude. In other words, you have to go out and teach people how bad they have it. You have to fill them with resentment. Yes. Then they become the agents of revolt and rebellion. And why doesn't economics work? Why doesn't economics work? For the reason you said, you can change your economic station. If you strive, if you believe in yourself as an individual, as a father, as a mother, as a member of your family, that you're going to do the right things, you know, follow the success sequence, work hard, be punctual, and do all these things, you will become wealthier. You will rise in economic station, but you can never change your sex. I'm sorry to bring it to you. You can never change your race. You can never change your country of origin. These are things that are immutable. So let's base resentment not on economic stations, but on these things that can never be changed.
Absolutely. And, you know, I love, this is such a great discussion to have, because part of what this accomplished, this whole effort of Gramsci, Marcuse, what that accomplished is it established groups in society, and they're in America, very sensitive, very tender things. So once those are established and we're celebrating, you make allusion in one of your articles, the idea how we're celebrating diversity, and everyone's afraid to comment at school, and when they go back to school night and they see their kid's teacher write on the board a slogan like, you know, diversity is our strength, or some other, you know, gobbledygook that doesn't really mean anything. But people are silenced by identity politics, or silenced by that celebration of inclusion, because the implication is if you aren't part of celebrating, if you're not kind of on board, you maybe have some questionable views and beliefs about other people. It's a brilliant strategy to silence the opposition. You agree?
Oh, and this again, Marcuse writes an essay in 1965, which he calls Repressive Tolerance. Obviously, this is a contradiction in terms, but what he's saying in this essay explicitly is that society needs only to tolerate leftist views. That if you come with a conservative view, it cannot be tolerated. It must be driven from the marketplace of ideas. So this is what we're seeing implemented today. A professor was fired today because he mildly criticized affirmative action. So this, I want to make a distinction for your listeners here. America has always been multi-ethnic. From the very beginning, America was multi-ethnic. That's why the founders in 1776 created the motto, "E pluribus unum," out of many, one. They understood that the nation they were forging had to have a feeling of common interests, that they had to be in it together, that they had to revere the founding documents and the ideals of the founding documents. So America has always been multi-ethnic, and I don't have a problem whatsoever, nobody should, with celebrating where your grandmother's from or where your grandfather's from, or celebrating the language they spoke around the kitchen table, or liking grandmother's cooking. I am myself a Cuban American, as you said. I like smoking cigars once a week, not just because I actually like to smoke cigars, but because I think I'm communing with my ancestors who actually grew tobacco in the 1700s. So, these are things that are quite healthy, actually. It is when you're hemmed into blocks, into things that are artificial, into things that were created by the government, and then filled with resentment against the country, so you will change the country. That I very much have a problem with.
Could not agree more. And these are really vital conversations to have, because I kind of live my life in politics. Happily so. I get very involved in political campaigns. I get very involved and I do a lot of public speaking, and I do a lot of talking to people about the issues facing us and how we resolve them, and try to urge people to think along the lines of every challenge we have as Americans, we can resolve as Americans using a system established by our founders, using a system that is designed to encourage the idea that robust debate of ideas, the First Amendment, the brilliance of robust debate of ideas and all that. But this identity politics shifts the conversation from, what is the proper use of border walls, or what is the proper use of right idea of border security, or the right idea of citizenship or immigration. Every issue, if you're coming at politics from this very divisive identity politics, it just simply becomes a question of, do you agree with the hyphenated group that is asserting this, or are you a racist? It's been tremendously effective. And I think that there are, though, and your book is going to do a brilliant job to help this. I want to talk about your book more, but it's helping Americans start to see we can't continue like this. We can't resolve anything. You can't get to order. You can't get to progress if all you're going to do is have a dictatorial assertion about what you must believe, or else we're going to call you racist, and then move forward on ideas. And I think our body politic, and I actually think the American people are getting kind of tired of this. Did you sense that in your writing and research of the book, that people are recognizing it and not willing to put up with it as much as they have in the past?
Well, I want to say a couple of things. The first one is, bless you for talking about the founding ideals. One of the reasons why I am hopeful is because every time we had tried to solve a problem in America, whether it's the revolution, whether it's slavery, whether it was Jim Crow, we have done so by aspiring to the ideals that all men are created equal. So that helped us in the revolution, obviously. Then it helped us in the Civil War. Lincoln actually wrote that he thought Jefferson had put in those words for him, waiting for a man to come along to resolve the issue of slavery. Then when we had the 100 awful years of segregation, of Jim Crow, again, we look up to all men are created equals. Martin Luther King comes to the mall in 1963 and says, we're here to cash this promissory note. What is that promissory note? It is the promissory note of all men are created equal, endowed with a creator with unalienable rights. I think right now we can solve this issue of identity politics, again, by lifting our gaze towards those ideals. All men are created equal. There are no inherent values. Ideas don't inhere in your DNA. Now, sorry, what was the second thing you said? Because I really also wanted to address that.
Okay, that's not a fair question, because I'm just talking. Let's see. I'm sure it'll come back to me. Well, while we're waiting for it to come back to one of us, I did want to hit one point in your book I thought was really, really interesting, is that and I know that I respect the Heritage Foundation is nonpartisan, And so I'm not asking you to take sides politically, but there have been assertions by people in the American political scene that demographics is destiny, is the point they make. And essentially that because America is demographically, statistically likely to become, they use the expression majority minority by whatever year it is, 2040, that the idea that, well, then, there will be just absolute adherence to leftism in this country because the demographics are destiny, and everybody knows that everyone who's a member of a hyphenated group is going to end up supporting more leftist ideas, which I think is a racist assertion. But you talk about that a little bit in your book and how that has been manipulated and developed by people they're really arguing for leftism, but they're saying it's inevitable because of race. And so tell us that that's not true, okay?
Okay, so two things. Now I remember what you said before. You talked about whether I am seeing whether Americans are actually pausing and saying, hang on. The very reason I wrote my book is to shed light on all of this, to show our fellow Americans, what has happened, because people don't understand what has happened, who did it, how they did it, and especially why they did it, and how we can stop it. So that I expressly, and I do think that this is an inflection year, and not in the way liberals think it is. This is an inflection year in that many Americans are beginning to say, what? They're looking at the TVs, not that CNN or the cable news or the networks ever show the mayhem in Portland, but they understand what is happening. So that's the first thing. On the demographics thing. So Debbie, I'm just going to take a point in our history. As I said, we have always been a nation of changing demographics. But during the Ellis Island period, we took in people from Armenia, we took in people from Greece, from Sicily, Jews from Eastern Europe. We took in people, Assyrians, Lebanese, great numbers of them. We did not think then of hiving them off into siloing them into minority status. We did not say, okay, you're going to be this minority, you're going to be this minority, and there's victimization attached to this status, and you're a victim and you should be aggrieved. No, we didn't do that. We did what no other country has ever done. We extended our hand and said, welcome. You're going to be American. If you come in here, you can be an American, but we have a creed. All men are created equal, endowed with unalienable rights. We have expectations. Men and women have equal rights under the law. Men are not superior to women, women are not superior to men. These are things that we accept in this country. And people could join the melting pot. We stopped doing that expressly for the reasons I've discussed from the 60s on, and then we started putting people into these minority groups and adding the grievance aspect to it. So we don't have to do this. We can go back to the old model. In fact, I think we should, and I think we will, and we can have, expect the demographers have this wonderful term called ethnic attrition. What it means is that somebody with a Korean grandmother or somebody with a Cuban grandfather, it really will just be a mainstream person. Will be an American and will have no feelings of marginalization unless they're being told constantly that they should feel marginalized. So that is a bad model, and we should discontinue it.
I love that. And actually, similar to what you're talking about, in America, in this election cycle especially, there's been the development of movements that are really tied to the ideas you're talking about. One is called Blexit, the Black and Latina exit, and it is from one particular party. But the point of the founder, Candace Owens and Brandon Tatum, is to say you're not assigned political beliefs because of your skin color. You should actually think for yourselves. You should think about what you believe in, and you should actually entertain and understand the facts of what kind of policies have blessed and uplifted America and what policies have repressed, divided, and impoverished America. And as they're able to do that, it is, I think, the scariest thing ever to the Marxist movement in this country is the idea that individuals are being of various ethnic groups are being inspired to think for themselves, to push back against this kind of siloing of people by their ethnicity and race. I think that's one thing I was getting at my previous question, which we both forgot momentarily, but is this idea that, we are rising as individuals. We encourage people to think for themselves. What do you think about that?
Well, yes, obviously, the founding documents, the whole idea of natural rights speaks in terms of individual rights. Individuals are endowed with by their creator with these rights. They can observe these rights in nature, and so the individual is the locus of these rights. But also the Christian tradition thinks in terms of individual salvation. There is no such a thing as collective guilt, which is what the left is trying to do right now. Collective guilt. There's no collective redemption either. You have to save yourself, and that is the Christian tradition that actually stands.
Salvation. Yeah. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So sorry. Go ahead.
I said, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Yes. That's
right.
in the Bible.
So
yeah.
So I think that these two powerful currents in our society, the Christian foundations of the Judeo-Christian foundations of America, and also the founding documents, which emphasize the individual, is something that I think is something we should go back to, and not think in terms of collective groups again, which were artificially created by the government in the first place, and not think of us in terms of being minorities, majority. No, we're individuals. We're Americans. We come from, our ancestors came from many different lands. In my case, I came myself, but really, we're all in this together. We have solidarity with one another, and let's move forward with that.
Yeah, I love that idea of our ideas, instead of being our identity being rooted in the country our ancestors happen to come from. Our identity in America is rooted around and tied to, and is actually, the ideas of the founding of America. That's the national American identity, which is a beautiful thing, welcomes anyone of any background, any age, any skin color, race, ethnicity. Everybody's welcome to embrace the ideas of America. It's the only real way past the effort to continually silo people. I know we're almost out of time, but do you have, I want to talk 2 or 3 more minutes about the cancel culture. Do you have another minute?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. So on this cancel culture thing, I think it's so interesting because you write so well, and I want to encourage people, we're listening in case you tuned in late. We're speaking with Mike Gonzalez, who's the Heritage Foundation. He's author of the new book, The Plot to Change America, and How Identity Politics is Dividing the Land of the Free. One of the many great points made in the book is that identity politics didn't just happen organically. It's orchestrated, it's intentional in the effort to use identity as a means to push people toward a political viewpoint, and we need to reject it and accept the higher idea of being an American. But you're right about the cancel culture, and I actually had a list ready to run through with you, because I think it's important. We were talking about the robust debate of ideas, the First Amendment. The cancel culture has overtaken, to some degree, the media in America, and the ability of people to move forward, left, to progress, to speak freely. Because if someone decides they don't like you, or they don't like what you're saying, they can find something in your background, say, that's it, you are done. You have no place to speak. You have no platform. You have no respect. I had a bunch of cases, but you said at the start of this interview, there was one thing that happened today, and I don't even know what that one was. Could you tell us about that?
Well, no, unfortunately, somebody sent to me in an email. I read it very rapidly because I'm doing a lot of interviews. So it was a professor who was fired, and I forget at which university, because he actually very mildly criticized affirmative action. But let me go back to cancel culture, which you just mentioned. Cancel culture, the media has been awful about this, by the way. I'm a former journalist. These are my friends. My wife is a former BBC producer. Look what happened at the New York Times, James Bennett firing Barry Weiss, resigned, saying, I can't do this anymore. I can't work here. Look what happened in New York Magazine, Andrew Sullivan. These are all not conservatives. These are all liberals who said no more. We're either fired or left. Now, why? What is the origin of cancel culture? And I'm going to tell you, Debbie. Marxism attempts to do the impossible. Marxism, it is supremely a very vain attempt at changing human nature. Che Guevara said he was trying to build a new man, create a new man. But as you know, human nature is unchanging. If you read the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Bible, you look at figures like Ulysses, Achilles, Agamemnon, Sarah, Abraham, Moses. And what strikes you most about them is that they're just like you and me. Moses and Abraham and Sarah are just like you and me. They have envy, they have lust, they are irresolute. Look at Peter. Peter denies Christ 3 times. You know, so when Marxists then fail, because they will fail at changing human nature, they must resort to coercion or violence. This is why every Marxist society has been coercive, because they have failed. And that is cancel culture. But I tell you, this is this is what gives me hope in the things that I do, why I get up every morning. Americans are too attached to liberty to put up with coercion. So I have that on my side.
Sir, I could not agree more. And this cancel culture, I'm out of time for today. Maybe we'll talk about it another time. I love your remarks and what you're talking about, the roots of the cancel culture. I think in this era where we have the Marxist movement very, very on fire in America, the Marxist movement trying to push away the ideas of the founding ideas of America, the founding assumptions of America, cancel culture fits right in with that. Just the no tolerance for anybody who dares to be to speak, to be who dares to disagree with us. And so college professors losing jobs, the average Joe losing jobs. The idea that there was a nursing, I mean, I have a whole litany of them I had organized, but one was a nursing instructor, a woman who's an instructor at nursing school, who lost her job for saying all lives matter. That kind of bridges it. A cancel culture tied in with the identity politics. That's it. That's an impermissible statement. All lives matter. And what an affront, really, to the idea of America that all lives matter is an evil, harmful thing that you're not allowed to say anymore at the risk of actually losing your job. Okay, so Mike Gonzalez, fabulous book. I'm going to show our listeners again. Order it on Amazon. Here it is right here. We have a funny screen here. Can't see which way I'm going. All right, this is the book right here. You ought to order it on Amazon, The Plot to Change America. And also to find you, Mike Gonzalez at Heritage, you can just look up Heritage Foundation, put in Mike Gonzalez's name, and up will come the articles he's written. He's a great writer and great thinker. And thank you so much for taking time to join me today.
It was really thank you very much. They can go to heritage.org/theplot, and that's where you'll find the book. You'll find many things about it.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you for writing, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Deb.
Okay, folks, I tell you, that is a very cool book. I mean, I read a lot of books, to decide what would be fun to talk with you about. It's just very, very, very intellectual, but very common sense. And I actually think it's kind of reassuring to people to realize that this whole identity politics thing, which seems to have just dissolved normal political conversation in America, it is not natural, it is orchestrated. It is not inevitable. In fact, it must inevitably fail because its ideas are just antithetical to the liberty that America really loves. So great book. Encourage you to get it.